Oh man, it's freezing out here. Where and when am I?
Yeah, man, I'm done playing this game.
Dude, it's not even fair anymore. These new cards are so broken.
Probably still too far in the future. Hey, fellas, why don't you want to play Magic anymore?
All these new cards are way too strong. I can't play the classics anymore at my LGS.
Yeah, like, how am I supposed to beat Ulalek?
Yeah, I know. I mean, exiling half the library and Annihilator X on top of that, it's stupid at this point. Yeah, you're talking about this card, right? What the? What's up, Planeswalkers? How you doing? How you doing? MH3 is about to be released and destroy Magic as we know it. Unfortunately, it's gonna have to get in line. Anyways, you're not here for that. You're here because you want to see how we can upgrade or build today's commander, Ulalek, Fused Atrocity, a Wooborg or 5 colorless Eldrazi 2/5 that comes with the text that says, whenever you cast an Eldrazi spell, you may pay 2 colorless. If you do, copy all spells you control. Then, copy all other activated and triggered abilities you control. You may choose new targets for the copy, and mana abilities can't be copied. So if you're familiar with Eldrazi's, then you'll know that they tend to come with cast triggers that this commander can capitalize on. But if you read the fine print, this commander copies all spells you control when you cast an Eldrazi spell, making flash speed Eldrazi nonsense possible. For simplicity's sake though, we are not making that deck today. No, we're going old school beat down with big noodle monsters. Now, before you check the price tag of the deck list and have a heart attack, it's important to remember that the deck list is being made with cards that haven't come out yet, and they tend to run high on price for at least the first 10 days as that comes out. Also, there are always other ways to secure cards. To start things off, let's talk about the deck's Boom Booms. These are cards that can shift things in our favor when they hit the board or just flat out end games. They're also some of the most fun to play with, just not against. First off, Ulalek, the Defiler, which on cast is going to leave a player with a quarter of their library, and before you start typing, remember, we can double our cast triggers thanks to our commander. But the fun doesn't stop there with this card. No, we actually get Annihilator Yes, which means anyone unlucky enough to be attacked by our boy here is not going to be having a board left. Now we're cool, the World Anew is going to steal a player's board, so pick the one with the most damage so we can close the game out, and then there's no need to worry because it has crazy protection, and then if someone does manage to kill the creature, then we sack all the creatures we control, which is the ones we stole. Ulalek, Void Gorger, is a bomb in our deck, not for its offensive power, but rather the value this card generates for us if we manage to keep it around. The majority of our spells are colorless in this deck, and they cost a lot, so triggering this card's cascade shouldn't be an issue. Flare of Loyalties has a sweet cast trigger for us to copy, letting us steal 2 creatures with a minimum of 20 power, and the Annihilator is nice too. It Betrays is a classic Eldrazi threat that hoses sack decks. Honestly though, this card has kind of fallen off over the last few years, but it's not completely useless. It's still a threat that needs to be answered, and it will always have a home in Eldrazi decks. Rise of the Eldrazi is a massive spell that can pull us ahead thanks to that extra turn, and it's always a sweet card to hit off Ulalek. The final bomb of our deck doesn't swing low, as Echoes of Eternity does everything we want. Copy our colorless spells like most of the cards I just covered, and doubles our commander's ability for triple the Eldrazi fun. Now for the Palette Cleanser, which might not be fun, but if we don't have it, then we're not playing Magic. This is going to be our ramp. These cards are going to get us the mana we need to play our big spells. Chittering Dispatcher makes a spawn token when it leaves the battlefield, which normally wouldn't get played, but since it comes with Myriad, it means we can actually generate 3 Eldrazi spawns each turn we attack with it. Glaring Flesh Raker will generate Eldrazi spawns whenever we cast colorless spells. Ideally, those spells would be Mana Rocks. Snapping Voidcrawl is a simple mana Zork that taps for 2 colorless, but at least towards the end of the game, we can draw cards with it. I'd also like to note that while we're playing a 5-color deck that could be playing better ramp than these creatures, we still want to play them since they're all Eldrazi that trigger our commander on the cheap. For Mana Rocks, we have Sol Ring, Arcane Signet, Fell Warstone, Mind Stone, Thought Vessel, Hedron Archive, Thrawn Dynamo, and Chromatic Ori, which is a draw 5 with our commander. Forsaken Monument is going to double our colorless mana producing sources while giving us life, often giving us the time we need to start doing our thing. Path of Annihilation is going to make us some spawn tokens and then turn them into mana dorks along with the rest of our Eldrazi. This card is a bit of a bomb in our ramp category, as Awakening Zone and From Beyond that passively generate Eldrazi spawn get way better with this card, as we don't have to sack them and instead we're just generating mana dorks each turn. Idol of the False God also generates us more spawn tokens, but it also has a payoff. If we sack our spawns, it'll turn into an Annihilator to Eldrazi. The rest of these cards are going to give us fixing or discount our Eldrazi. It that Heralds the End is a simple 2 mana Eldrazi that'll discount our 7 mana colorless spells. It also buffs colorless creatures, but when we're casting 10/10s, a few power really doesn't make much of a difference. Herald of Kozilek also just discounts our colorless spells without the buff. Conduit of Ruin is an expensive ramp piece, but it doubles as a tutor for us, as it allows us to search for a 7 power colorless creature, which we'll throw into our hand, and then we'll just get a flat discount of 2 for the first creature we cast each turn. Ugin the Ineffable provides us a flat discount to colorless spells, and a sizable one at that, while also giving us some removal and card advantage. Urza's Incubator discounts all Eldrazi by a flat 2, unlike the card I just covered though it cost only 3 mana. Herald's Horn is more flat discount that provides card advantage, sometimes. Darksteel Monolith will let us play a big colorless spell for free once a turn, but this card itself costs 8 mana, so ramp, maybe. Also, Chromatic Lantern, which should have been with the mana rocks, so yeah, I'm not sure how it got here. Now that the core of the deck is explained, you're probably wondering, how do we plan to stay alive? Good question. We can't. It's over. That's what I would be saying, of course, if we weren't playing a category called Interaction and Disruption. We aim to create problems and solve them with these cards. World Breaker, which will take out problem enchantments or artifacts, and Null and Elemental Blast, which lets us dunk on players trying to play more than one color at the table. Warping Whale has some great utility since it can be a ramp spell, a piece of removal for a mana dork, or a counter to a sorcery spell of our choice. Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, I know, it's 10 mana, which is a lot, but in a bind this card can solve a few issues when we cast it, and if we're lucky we can copy the cast trigger with our commander, and solve up to 4 problem permanents while also creating a 10/10 nightmare for the board to deal with. Ulamog the Infinite Gyre serves a similar role by both destroying a problem while being one when it comes down. Void Winnower makes combat a nightmare for most decks, or just makes some decks unable to cast spells, making this card a huge issue for a lot of players. Twins of Discord lets us make our board nearly unblockable, as some players may have a different CMC blockers, but regardless, this card is another must-kill threat for most tables. Not of This World is a perfect way for us to protect our big Eldrazi while also giving us the instant speed Eldrazi spell if we want to pull off some shenanigans with our commander's ability. An example could be that someone goes to Swords our Ulamog when we're casting our Void Winnower, and in response we protect our Ulamog with Not of This World, giving you a chance to get 3 Void Winnowers out of the deal as long as you control your commander. Kozilek's Command is a Warping Whale on steroids, as this card does everything. The only drawback is that we have to pick just 2 of them. Most of the time though, we're going to be choosing removal with ramp. Now it is worth saying this is the deck's only answer to graveyard stuff, so do keep that in account, but you can always fix that in your mana base. The rest of the cards can be summed up in this statement. There are board wipes that we get around because we're playing a lot of colorless cards. First, Selective Obliteration, which exiles permanents, but since most of our cards are colorless, we don't have to worry about the exile. Similarly, All Is Dust does the same thing, only there isn't any hoops about choosing colors to bog things down. Although we're not exiling the cards, we are making them sack it. Finally, Ugin the Spirit Dragon, the planeswalker that obliterates most decks and manages to stick around because players can't Swords or Doomblade it. So you can do it again in a few turns. Don't worry. People love playing against this card, and definitely will be delighted when you show them you're playing it. Next, we'll talk about how we're going to get cards into our hand, and that's the only way you can ever truly win a lot of your games. Up the Beanstalk is a simple draw engine for our deck, as most of our cards are 5 or more mana, and what's nice is that it gives us a card for the trouble of even playing it. Kozilek's Unsealing gives us a draw 3 trigger when we cast big creatures, which we can copy with our commander of course, which we love, and it even ramps us when we play some spells. For One Ring, because if we're playing Eugene, then we might as well play cards everyone loves. Love it or hate it, I still think playing the One Ring in a colorless deck is pretty fair. Your opponents might not see it that way though, as our commander is technically Wooburg. Palantir of Orthrink is a fun card for us, as most players will let us draw unless they want to die, as a simple mill 2 off this card will hit for 24 damage if things go correctly, and it just goes up from there. Deep Fathom Skulker, which lets us draw some cards if our creatures connect, which, I'll be honest, people tend to chump a 10/10, but lucky for us we have a few ways in this deck to get our creatures in. Sire of Stagnation is our answer to land decks, finally letting us feel a fraction of the power that Simic players experience daily. In all seriousness though, this card does draw a lot of cards, so people will kill it as soon as they can. People tend to hate having their libraries exiled. Null Drifter is an easy card to evoke and draw some cards, but we can also cast it later and trigger cards like Kozilek's Unsealing for even more cards. Spawnbed Protector is not going to be drawing us cards directly, but instead returning our Eldrazi creatures from our graveyard to our hand, which is a form of card advantage. Another sweet thing about this card is it's going to ramp us when we do return those cards. Artisan of Kozilek is similar. Instead, the creature will go straight to the battlefield and it will only happen once, but the card itself comes with Annihilator too, so at least it's a good attacker. Kozilek Butcher of Truth is going to be a simple draw 4 while also being a bomb with Annihilator 4. Kozilek the Great Distortion can potentially be an entire hand refill. Just make sure you're casting this card last to get the most cards out of it. And like the last Kozilek, it is a bomb on its own, letting us counterspell cards if we have the right CMC cards in hand. The last thing to cover are Eldrazi or Spell that don't fit into any category but are still relevant to our big strategy. Rhythm of the Wilds will shut off counterspells and make sure our big 10/10s can swing the turn they come down. Being able to trigger Annihilator creatures fast is always going to put your opponents off guard. Bismuth Mind Render is a menacing attacker that, on damage, lets us steal non-land spells from our opponents. We do have to pay life to cast the card, but that's a fine trade-off as we don't need to use the mana. Angelic Aberration can turn our leftover Eldrazi spawns into 4/4 flying Eldrazi, but this card is pretty lackluster without those spawn tokens. Lucky for us, we're playing a lot of ways to make those tokens. Benthic Anomaly is going to copy our opponent's best creature and then make a huge creature, which just sounds fun, but in practice this card might not always hit. I'm still throwing in the deck because I think it's too fun to pass up. Hideous Taskmaster, which is a bit of a bomb and maybe should have gone in the bomb category. However, there will be times when you will not be able to steal the full 3 creatures. However, if you do, this card is definitely a bomb. And also another sad thing about this card is that it literally dies to shock. Breaker of Creation is a big dumb Eldrazi that is hard to remove while also coming with more Annihilator to make our opponents squirm. I will say though, if you want to streamline the deck and you need to start making cuts, then start here. For the mana base, follow your budget, but if you've abandoned all hope, then feel free to copy the mana base found in the deck list in the description of this video. I went for a more colorless focused deck, which saved the price a little bit, but not by much, and if you want to play more staples with this commander, then I definitely look for a different mana base, as getting colors could be tricky. My recommended land for this deck is Eye of Ugin. It's a simple way to discount our big Eldrazi and function as a tutor in the late game. There is no combo in today's video, and that's where we're going to be leaving things for today. I hope you enjoyed the video and let me know what you think in the comments below. Did I go too high with the price of this deck? Is the list too timmy, or is MH3 truly the end of Magic? Feel free to share it all. I'd also like to thank you for getting this far in the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.